You never warned them. And that silence haunts them more than any words ever could. They watched you. They studied your face for clues. They waited for you to react, to defend, to explain yourself. But you gave them nothing. Not because you didn't see what was coming. You saw everything. You felt the shift in the atmosphere before anyone else noticed. You sensed the tension building beneath polite smiles and empty promises. Your spirit discerned what your eyes couldn't prove, and it pressed against your chest so hard some nights you forgot how to breathe. But God told you not to speak, so you obeyed, and they mistook your obedience for ignorance. They assumed your quietness meant you were unaware. They believed your stillness was weakness. They were wrong. You are not someone who walks through life with closed eyes. God trained your discernment through seasons that nearly broke you, through disappointments that made no sense, through losses that left you questioning everything except His voice. And His voice said one thing: watch, wait, trust me. So you watched, you waited, and you trusted. Even when every human instinct screamed at you to intervene, what they never understood is that you were never called to be their messenger in this season. God seated you as a witness. This was not a conversation. This was a spiritual courtroom, and your silence was evidence. Heaven was building a case, and you were not permitted to interfere. If you ever felt like you don't fit into this world, like God set you apart, hid you, or took you through battles nobody else understands, then this message is speaking directly to your spirit. Don't scroll. Subscribe so you never miss a word God may be trying to send specifically to you. If you've ever carried a burden you couldn't explain, a knowing that pressed against your chest until you couldn't breathe, then you understand what the Chosen One is walking through right now. Subscribe, because this story isn't just being told. It's being lived, and you might be living it too. Something shifted when you stopped reacting. You didn't announce your withdrawal. You didn't make declarations or set boundaries with loud words. You simply stopped. You stopped explaining your intentions to people who had already decided who you were. You stopped defending your heart to those who preferred the version of you they had created in their own minds. You stopped responding to provocations designed to pull you out of your peace. And that's when fear entered the room. Not your fear, theirs. There were people who relied on your reactions. They needed your emotional responses to feel powerful. They depended on your explanations to find ammunition. Your transparency had become their weapon, and suddenly you were no longer handing it to them. The manipulator couldn't read you anymore. The pretender didn't know where they stood. The accuser had no new material. Your silence became a wall they couldn't climb, and it terrified them. You noticed the changes. The way conversations shifted when you entered. The way eyes lingered on you a second too long. The subtle tests, questions wrapped in concern, comments disguised as jokes, all designed to see if you knew what they were hiding. You knew, but you said nothing, because God had not released you to speak. Some nights you question yourself. Am I being cold? Am I being prideful? Am I mishearing God? But every time you brought it to Him, peace returned. Not answers, just peace. And peace was enough. What they didn't realize was that you weren't being distant. You were being guarded. God Himself had placed a hedge around your spirit that their manipulation could no longer penetrate. Your calm was not indifference. It was divine protection. Some of you listening right now know what it feels like to carry a spiritual burden the world can't see. If this message is touching something deep within you, something you rarely talk about, then go ahead and subscribe. You shouldn't walk this journey alone. There are others chosen like you, and this channel is where you'll finally feel understood. The chosen one stood alone in a room full of people who no longer understood them. They smiled, but their spirit was heavy. If you've ever felt invisible in plain sight, misread by those who should have known you best, then you know this weight. Subscribe, because someone needs to remind you, your silence is not weakness. It's warfare. You never warned them, but someone else did. God began speaking, just not through you. The pretender had a dream one night. A door slammed shut in front of them. A voice echoed through the darkness. Your time is running out. They woke up shaking, heart pounding, sweat on their forehead. They told no one, but they couldn't forget. The manipulator was in a public place when they overheard a conversation between strangers. The words described exactly what they had been planning, specific details that no one should have known. They looked around nervously, trying to convince themselves it was coincidence. It wasn't. The accusers stopped sleeping well. Night after night, they tossed and turned, haunted by a restlessness they couldn't name. No logical reason, no obvious cause, just an unshakable sense that something was about to be uncovered. And then came the sermon. All three of them attended a service where the message felt aimed directly at their seats. The pastor spoke about hidden motives, about pretending to love while planning harm, about the danger of touching those God has anointed. They glanced at each other but said nothing. God was speaking, loudly, clearly, unmistakably, but he bypassed you completely. And there was a reason for that. If you had warned them, they would have argued. They would have dismissed it as jealousy, insecurity, or emotion. They would have twisted your words and used them against you. So God removed you from the equation. He spoke through dreams they couldn't control, through strangers they couldn't discredit, through circumstances they couldn't explain away. And when the warning came from every direction except you, they had no one to blame, no one to accuse, no one to twist. Only God. You sensed something shifting but didn't know the details. And for the first time, you were grateful for your silence, because your fingerprints were nowhere on what was coming. The chosen one prayed for them, fasted for them, hoped God would turn their hearts. But obedience meant stepping back and letting God handle it his way. If you ever had to release someone to the consequences you saw coming, knowing you couldn't stop it, subscribe. Because you're not cruel for obeying. You're faithful. Something broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. The manipulator noticed it first. Doors that once swung open for them now remained shut. Calls went unanswered. Opportunities vanished without explanation. The influence they once wielded started slipping to their fingers like water. The pretender felt it next. People who once trusted them began pulling back. Invitations stopped coming. The inner circle they had carefully cultivated started to shrink. The accuser experienced it last, but deepest. Their voice, once respected and feared, now echoed in empty rooms. The words that used to carry weight now fell flat. Favor was lifting, and they knew it. Fear didn't arrive randomly. Fear arrived because truth was getting close. The same confidence that once made them bold now cracked under an invisible pressure they couldn't name. Meanwhile, the betrayal you had sensed for months finally surfaced. You discovered the conversations held when you weren't present, the plans made to discredit you, the alliances formed to remove you from places God had planted you. It hurt, not because you were surprised, but because you were right. You had felt the distance long before you understood it. The strange tension, the subtle coldness, the way certain people avoided your eyes. God had let you feel it early, not to torment you, but to prepare you. So when full truth came, it wounded you, but it didn't destroy you. And now, watching them scramble, watching their carefully constructed plans crumble, you felt something unexpected, grief. Not for what you lost, for what could have been. You never wanted this outcome. You prayed for a different ending. But obedience doesn't negotiate with comfort. And some chapters have to close before new ones can open. What you just heard may feel painfully familiar. The rejection, the hidden attacks, the strange isolation, the spiritual warfare nobody believed you about. If this resonates, subscribe, not because you have to, but because your spirit deserves a place where all these battles are finally acknowledged. No chosen one should fight alone. The chosen one sat in the aftermath of betrayal, not shattered, but still wounded. Because knowing something is coming doesn't make it hurt less. If you've ever been right about someone and wish you weren't, if the summon has ever felt more like a curse than a gift, subscribe. You deserve to be reminded that your pain has purpose. Now you understand. God kept you silent for 3 reasons. The first reason, to protect your heart. Some battles drain you if you fight them too early. If God had released you to confront them in that season, the warfare would consume energy you needed for what was coming next. Your silence wasn't punishment. It was preservation. God was saving your strength for an assignment that required everything you had. The second reason, to remove your fingerprints. If you had warned them, they would have blamed you for the outcome. Every consequence would have been twisted into your fault. You spoke destruction over us. You manifested this with your negativity. You cursed us with your words. But because you stayed silent, the judgment came without your involvement. No one could credit you. No one could accuse you. God handled it alone, and the responsibility rested solely on those who ignored his voice. The third reason, to prove that your authority comes from obedience, not confrontation. This season was never about what you could say. It was about what God would reveal. Your power was never in your arguments. It was in your surrender. Your influence was never in your volume. It was in your restraint. And through this process, something inside you changed. You became harder to provoke, less desperate to be understood, unavailable for manipulation. The enemy lost access, not because you became cold, but because you became consecrated. Silence is not always surrender. Restraint is not always weakness. Stillness is not always inaction. Sometimes the greatest act of warfare is refusing to fight in the flesh what God is handling in the spirit. The chosen one finally understood why God held their tongue. It wasn't rejection, it was refinement. If you ever wonder why God wouldn't let you speak, defend yourself, or expose the truth, subscribe. Because your silence may be the very thing that qualifies you for what's coming next. The elevation came quietly. No announcements. No dramatic vindication. No public acknowledgement. Just doors. Doors opening that you never knocked on. Favor arriving that you never requested. Authority increasing in places you never pursued. You are being repositioned. The ones who felt safe now feel exposed. The ones who control the narrative now question their own words. The ones who dismiss you now study you in silence, trying to understand what shifted. But you don't owe them an explanation. God is restoring what was stolen, and he doesn't require your defense to do it. What's happening now is a reversal. Not loud, not vengeful, just undeniable. And your response? You don't seek revenge. You don't demand apologies. You don't rehearse what you would say if given the chance. You simply walk forward, calm, certain, unmovable. Hear this clearly. You did not miss your moment. You did not fail by staying silent. You did not disobey God. You obeyed perfectly. And because of that, what they feared is already unfolding. What you endured is being redeemed. What God promised is closer than it has ever been. Stay silent. Stay obedient. Stay watchful. The same God who warned them is now rewarding you. And this time, you won't need to say anything at all. If this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, if something in your spirit recognizes this story as your story, then you're not here by accident. Subscribe and become part of a community where chosen ones are understood, encouraged, and reminded of who they really are in God. If this message spoke to the wounds you carry, if it reminded you that being chosen is not easy, but God handpicked you anyway, then subscribe. Join a community that understands your journey, your calling, and your spiritual battles. Don't miss the next message God may be using to guide you, strengthen you, and confirm what he's been whispering to your heart. The chosen one walked into a new season, not with applause, but with alignment, not with recognition, but with reward. If you've been waiting for God to move on your behalf, wondering if your obedience was even noticed, subscribe. Because this channel exists to remind you, heaven saw everything, and your breakthrough is closer than you think. Stay still, stay faithful, and watch what God does next.